Hey, so how's everybody's books that I were picking that always I'm reading with a vengeance. Let's try that again. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather and as always I'm reading with a vengeance and I hope you are too. Gonna be honest with you, this is the second video that I'm recording today. Trying to make up for lost time and my voice is protesting for sure, but I'm gonna do my best because I'm just excited to get back to recording. How is everybody doing? How is everybody's reading going this summer? What is summer like for you guys? Is summer a time where you get a lot of reading done, or is there just too much activity? Are you reading less than what you would like to be reading? I think I had a little bit of a slump in the spring, but June things started to pick up and I found myself connecting a little bit easier with the books that I was reading. So that's always good news. But today, what I'm going to talk to you about are the 5 books that are my favorites for the second quarter of the year. Another favorite video that I like to record. I record my favorites, 5 to be exact, for each quarter of the year. I will link down below the first video that I did this year of my 5 favorites for the first quarter, and that was January, February, and March. With this video, I'm going to tell you about my 5 favorite books that I read from April, May, and June. There were a couple of surprises in this list. I will say that this year has been a little bit more of a struggle coming up with books I would consider my favorites. Last year, I remember having a hard time narrowing it down to 5 favorites. I was reading so many good books, but when I did come up with my list of 5 favorites, they were like 5 books that I absolutely love, love, love. This year, it's been a little bit different. While the 5 books that I came up with for the first quarter of the year, there were 2 that I loved. Then there were 3 that I really, really liked. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. I think just last year spoiled me a little bit, you know, when every other book that I was reading was 5 stars. I guess I really can't have that expectation. But I digress. Let's get into the 5 books that I chose for my favorites of the second quarter of the year. I'll start with the surprises. The first surprise was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. Need I say more? I mean, I did not expect, well, first of all, I didn't expect to read it, but I succumbed to the hype. Everybody I talked to was just raving about it, saying it was so well done. I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by actress Michelle Williams. She did an amazing job. And what's funny is, thank God, Britney Spears got someone else to narrate this book, because there's an introduction that Britney Spears actually narrates, and it's a very, very short introduction. She narrates it herself, and her voice is just wrecked by years of abuse of, well, just singing and smoking, and I could not have listened to an entire book with Britney Spears' voice. So anyways, it was very well narrated, and Britney just spills all the tea. She's honest. She doesn't make any excuses for any of her behavior in the past. She owns up to a lot of what has happened to her, but she also spills some tea, and it's good stuff. And I really, really enjoyed her story. It's an intriguing story. I mean, I think any story where someone becomes that successful and that famous at such a young age, you know, you want to peek behind the curtain, right? And it's a pretty quick read. I mean, I don't even think, you know, some of these celebrity memoirs are like bricks. Have you seen Barbra Streisand's memoir? It's, I think, over 1,000 pages long. I mean, I realize her career, there's a lot of content there, but still. Anyways, it's a quick read. It's good. Highly recommend it. I loved it way more than I expected to. The other surprise is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I do not gravitate towards romance. But let me tell you, Emily Henry is worth all the hype she gets. She is an excellent writer, and I would say her books are not just romance. I would consider her almost literary fiction. She writes some good stories. She writes good characters, and I really, really enjoyed Book Lovers. Book Lovers follows Nora, who is a literary agent. She's a no-nonsense woman. The people she takes care of the most are her clients and her younger sister, Libby. Libby and Nora have this history. Their mom died, and Nora ended up taking care of Libby from the time she was a teenager, I believe. And Libby convinces the very, very workaholic Nora to take a month off and go to this small town in one of the Carolinas and just be. Nora reluctantly goes because she loves her sister. And lo and behold, who does she run into but Charlie, who is an editor who, when they first met, they did not hit it off. There is tension, but of course there's chemistry, and the story goes from there. And of course, you kind of know from the beginning, because this is what happens in this genre of book, you know, stuff happens between Charlie and Nora, but there's just more to it than that, because it doesn't happen right away. It doesn't happen without very real life obstacles, stuff that is very, very relatable. And then there's the whole relationship between Nora and her sister, and the very complicated nature of when a sister takes on the role of a parent because of the death of a parent. Just a lot going on in this story, and it was just very easily readable without being fluff. The characters are very well written. It was like watching a very well-made Hallmark or Lifetime movie. And I mean that in the best way possible. And of course, we have a book about books. So lots of literary references, which I, of course, appreciated. I really enjoyed this book. And to have a romance on my top 5, it's just a shock to me. Is it a shock to you guys? If you haven't read this one, if you haven't read any Emily Henry, I would recommend her easily. The next book I will tell you about, I just finished a couple of days ago, and I haven't even included it in a wrap-up yet. It'll be in my next wrap-up, so you hear a little bit about it now, but I couldn't not include it in this list, and that is The Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. I read this for our mystery book club that we have through work, and it was a pick of mine because I knew I wanted to read another Jennifer Hillier book after reading her Jar of Hearts, which is absolutely highly recommended from this girl. Obviously, this one did not disappoint either. I really, really enjoyed this book. I love her writing. I love the way she writes a mystery. I love her characters because in the past couple of mystery books that we have read for our mystery book club, the main character just makes really dumb choices, and it really is irritating. Whereas with this one, you know, bad stuff happens to this girl, and it's not because she's dumb or makes dumb decisions or she doesn't believe in herself or anything like that. I didn't find her annoying, which was refreshing. What is this about? So we're following Paris, who is a young woman who is married to Jimmy, and Jimmy is a Hollywood famous comedian, but he's also 30 years older than Paris. So of course, people around them think that Paris married him for his money. And one night, Jimmy is found dead, and Paris is found unconscious with the murder weapon in her hand next to Jimmy's dead body. So she, of course, is arrested for his murder. At the time, Paris doesn't even know if she killed her husband or not. Meanwhile, as she is trying to defend herself of this murder charge, she's getting letters saying, hey, I am getting out of prison. I know you're not who you say you are, and you owe me money for what you took from me. And if you don't want me to blab to the world who you are, you will pay me. So basically, we have 2 mysteries on 2 separate timelines. And you're going back and forth about 13 years, I would say. And I don't want to say too much about who you're following in the past and the mystery that kind of happened in the past and how it relates to the present, because I'm afraid I might spoil it for you accidentally. But just know, very engaging characters, very engaging mystery, very engaging toxic relationship. Nobody is all good, nobody is all bad. Well, with the exception maybe of one person. But incredibly compelling, well written. I flew through this book. Yeah, I would say I liked Jar of Hearts and this one in equal measure, but I would say that Jar of Hearts is a little darker, maybe even a lot darker. And this one has a little bit more heart, but still a compelling mystery with dark secrets, and some dark stuff happens in this book. So just be warned about that too. I'm just so happy that I finally got to this one. It's been a while since I read her other one. So yeah, I enjoyed it immensely and would definitely recommend it. The last two books I can almost guarantee will be on my favorites of the year. I mean, I would have to read a lot of 5-star, stellar, wonderful, amazing books in the second half of the year to bump these two off. The first one you guys will probably be able to guess because I have talked about it recently, and that is All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. I read the arc of this. This just came out June 25th. With all the raving that I did on my wrap-up video, I hope you guys have been able to get a copy of it. If you listen to my review in my wrap-up of this book, it's really hard for me to summarize the plot. I'm going to try a little bit better in this video. So I would call this literary fiction with a mystery and a coming-of-age element to it. You are following Patch and Saint. They are childhood friends, and they meet right around 1975, and that's where the story opens up. And then Patch is the unlikely hero in saving the town mayor's daughter from being abducted, but Patch gets abducted himself. He's kept in this dark room with another victim, a girl, and they develop this connection when they're both kept in this dark room. Even though they can't see each other, they are able to communicate with each other. Some time passes, some things happen. Patch ends up escaping, but whoever kidnapped him and the girl disappeared. Patch basically spends his life trying to find out what happened to this girl, and it becomes an obsession. Meanwhile, Saint is trying to hold on to her friendship with Patch and make sure he doesn't go off the deep end with this obsession of finding this girl. Did she even exist? Was it someone that he conjured up in the trauma of being abducted? And that's all I'll say really about the story. There's so much more that goes on in the story. I mean, obviously, this one's a chunker. This one is, gosh, over 600 pages long, I believe, but very, very short chapters. It goes by really quick. The story spans decades, starting in 75, I think ending in the 2000s. You've got really, really colorful, memorable characters, which is, I think, Chris Whitaker's specialty, because I read We Begin at the End, which I absolutely loved. Highly recommend that one too. And I still remember Duchess from that book. And he just writes characters so very well. In this story, it's one of those stories where so much happens and you don't quite get the significance of certain events or certain side plots or whatever, but everything connects at the end in such a satisfying and delicious way. I love this book so much. I love this author. I think he has one other book that I haven't read yet, but I will be reading all of this guy's stuff because this one just cemented his genius for me. I will give fair warning that the writing style at the very beginning, I would say like the first 10, maybe 20 pages was a little bit weird for me. I was almost put off by it. Like just the structure of the sentences, I don't know, it was firing weird electrical signals in my brain where I couldn't quite, I had to read certain sentences over and over again for things to make sense. I'm not sure what was going on there, but it only lasted, like I said, the first 10 or 20 pages, and then things got normal, fortunately. Don't let that deter you. I wish I had a copy of the book so that I could like read an example, but anyways, that's all to say that I loved this book. It'll be a favorite of the year. I can almost guarantee that. Please read it. And finally, another book that will more than likely be on my favorites of the year is The List of Suspicious Things by Jenny Godfrey. Little bit of a side note, I know I've mentioned before that I got this book as an ARC last year when I went to the Women's Prize in the goodie bag, and I only just read it, I believe, in April. It turns out Jenny Godfrey was at the Women's Prize this year. I got to meet her, I got to talk to her, I got to take a picture with her too. It was very exciting for me. I couldn't really do anything but blubber about how much I loved her book. I couldn't say any other intelligent thing, but it was very exciting for me to meet her and just tell her how much I loved her book. This book is one of those books that just ticks all the things for me. It was coming of age, there was a mystery, it took place in the UK, there's a relationship between two young girls, the just charm of their friendship. There's a relationship between the main character and her dad that's just super sweet. This one follows Miv. She is, how old is Miv? Yeah, I think she's around 13. She lives in Yorkshire. And it just so happens this is during the time, I want to say at the end of the 70s, early 80s, where there was a serial killer, the Yorkshire Ripper, which was an actual thing that happened at the time. And that's going on in this book. And Miv decides to try to figure out who the Yorkshire Ripper is. And she enlists her best friend, Sharon. Sharon at first indulges her, and then ultimately she kind of tires of the whole idea of trying to find the Ripper. But in pursuing this mystery for Miv, Miv starts to learn about different people in her community. There's the old guy down the street that's kind of scary and lives by himself because his wife died, and she adds him to her list because he's suspicious for reasons only a 13-year-old can come up with. But as she meets him and questions him, she discovers that he's not who she thought he was. And then there's the shopkeeper who is not from the UK. He's added to her list because he doesn't look like everybody else. And the more she gets to know him, she realizes he's not who she thought he was. And through getting to know him, she gets to know his son who is in her class, and she becomes friends with him. And the story goes from there as Miv is learning that people are not as they appear, they are not as they seem. Meanwhile, Miv is dealing with the fact that her mother has suffered some kind of mental break and she doesn't talk anymore. She's very unresponsive. When she's at home, she just kind of sits in a chair and stares off into space, or she's living in a care facility for certain periods of time. So again, lots going on in this book, lots of really engaging, charming characters that you get to know through Miv's eyes. The relationship that Miv has with Sharon just was very nostalgic for me. You know, the friendships that we have at that age, the things that we do together, the things that we learn from each other. If you read this book, and I really hope that you do, I will warn you that your heart will be both warmed and broken. But of course, I'm never going to recommend a book to you that isn't worth the heartbreak. So this is another chunker. This one's almost 500 pages long, and I breezed through this book. It's very easily readable. The characters are very well developed, and the story is just fantastic. I absolutely loved this book. It was just a delight to read, and I can't believe I had it in my possession for almost a year before I opened it up. And I'm just kicking myself. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what this author writes next. So that is it. Those are my 5 favorites from the second quarter of the year. Have you read any of these books? I would like to know what your thoughts are on them. What have been your recent favorites? What stellar books have you read recently that you just want to rave about? I would love to know about it. Please let me know in the comments below, or you can just say hello in the doodly-doo. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm so happy to have you all here. I hope you all are reading some good books, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.